Hey YouTube, I usually go to YouTube for car maintenance videos and stuff when I'm working on my Scion FRS. I recently sheared one of the wheel studs on my car. I've done it to the front axle before, and usually like you take off the wheel and then you take off the brake rotor and then you have access to the wheel studs there. You can just like kind of like hammer them out and they come out just fine. But specifically on the rear axle, you have the drum brake from the emergency brake, which gets in the way. And I looked at all these other YouTube videos that involved like undoing the axle nut and then removing the e-brake. But I just realized after going through the work of removing the axle nut, which I had a problem with because the way the axle nut was staked onto the axle, it was like really flush with the axle. So like I couldn't just bend it out really easily. I had a bit of a battle with that, like unstaking the axle bolt so it would actually spin on the axle threads. And like the moment I finished doing that, I realized it was unnecessary. I could just fit the wheel stud like in the e-brake, like in a little spot there, and just like get this wheel stud in. So I did not have to remove the axle nut, and I do not have to remove the emergency brake, drum brake. So I'm gonna be kind of sharing this that I just found out right now, so hopefully people in the future aren't having a war with an axle nut and going to the trouble of removing their e-brake and stuff. Just to, I don't know, share a little bit faster method, less work. Because I just found out I'm kind of frustrated that I had that little battle with the axle nut when it was completely unnecessary. So hopefully this helps somebody out there. Yeah, so I'm gonna get into it now. All right, so once you remove the wheel and tire off of the car, this is what you'll see. You're gonna see here are the wheel studs. I kind of already did this, so the wheel stud that I sheared, I already took out. But essentially, you're gonna see this this brake rotor. I already uninstalled the brake caliper. I don't feel like reinstalling that right now because it's not just a slide-on thing. But pretty much, the brake caliper. It has 4 bolts, so 2 of the bolts hold the actual caliper part on, and then these bottom 2 bolts, they hold the bracket on. So yeah, these top 2 hold on to that little piston thing. So once you take off the top 2, that little piston thing comes off, and I just kind of squeezed it in there, and it's being held up by the whatever that is, subassembly, whatever. And then once that comes off, then you can take off these 2 bottom bolts, which hold this actual bracket onto this thing. So then once you take off the bottom 2 bolts, the whole thing comes off. So you just have this, and this is the brake rotor. So the brake rotor, it'll likely be pretty seized on there. You can't just pull it off. So the first thing that you're gonna wanna do is disengage your emergency brake if you have it engaged currently, because the emergency brake engages on the inside of this brake rotor, so you won't be able to remove it if it's engaged. And then once the e-brake is disengaged, this thing is free to come off, and you're gonna want to remove it. They provide these 2 holes here, which I have this thread gauge here, and I found this one fits. So this one is a, where is it? M7-1.0. So that's the thread bolt that you would need to go in there. And the idea is that you put 2 bolts in here and you tighten them, and as you tighten them, it's kind of forcing the rotor off of the hub. So you put those 2 bolts in, the M7-1.0, you keep tightening them, that applies force, and then eventually it should free up, and you can slide this brake rotor off, which it's already loose because I already removed it before, so it's no longer seized. And then once you remove the brake rotor, you'll see that this looks different from the front axle because it has the e-brake. So the e-brake is just a drum brake that these pads cause friction with the inside of this brake rotor to stop the wheel from spinning. So now that that's off, this is the part that I found out, which, as you can see, I just recently went through the work of removing this axle, which I found out wasn't necessary because if you look in this little area, it's quite deep. So I thought, wait a second, maybe I don't have to take off this whole entire thing. Maybe I can just put the wheel stud in here. So here's my wheel stud. This wheel stud is M12-1.25 diameter and thread pitch, and the length is 43.5 millimeters, which should be the stock wheel stud dimensions. So once you have the M12 1.25 43.5 millimeter length wheel stud, you put it in this area that I pointed out before, and as you can see, it fits behind the hub just fine without removing all that stuff. So now, whoop, my flash just turned off because the device got hot, but essentially I can get it in here just fine. The goal here when you set it is that you want these serrated teeth to mesh with the hub correctly. So you want to kind of rotate it and make sure it sits decently properly. You can kind of pull it towards you and try to spin it a little bit and make sure it doesn't spin at all to make sure teeth are engaged. And that'll make sure you're at a pretty good starting point. All right, so once I got the wheel back on, I then put all these bolts on by hand and then tightened them with my, I don't know what this is, 8-inch socket wrench, hand tight. And then for the new bolt, it was still sticking out even hand tight. It needed some more force. So I got my, I don't know, 1.5 or 2 feet breaker bar, and I hand tightened it with that. Again, I'm not going the full 90 foot-pound installation torque, just kind of adding more torque with the breaker bar to get it flush with all the other bolts. So now it seems flush with all the other bolts. So I'm gonna unscrew all these bolts, take the wheel back off, take the rotor back off, and inspect the new wheel stud to see if it's flush. So I took the wheel back off, I took the brake rotor back off. The brake rotor actually, after tightening these, it actually seized back on, so I had to go at it again in those little holes and screw in that M7 1.0 bolt to like apply force and unseize it again. So watch out for that. But yeah, so now I'm gonna inspect the new wheel stud. So the idea here is I go to the side and I look at it compared to the other wheel studs. So if you see the other wheel studs, the head is flush with that area there, and that's what you want. So if you go to the new wheel stud, you'll see that the head is flush with this thing here. So if you were able to see the thin part of the wheel stud on this side, that means you're not done, you didn't tighten it hard enough. And you may have not engaged the serrated teeth of the wheel stud onto this area properly, so you might want to, sledgehammer it out and then try to do it again where you kind of like push the wheel stud in by hand and kind of like spin it until like it's resisting your spinning, making sure that the teeth in this area of the wheel stud are engaged properly. But looks like I did that right, so this is nice and flush. So this wheel stud is, I'm going to call it installed. So yeah, that's how you install the new wheel stud on the rear axle of a Scion FRS Subaru BRZ Toyota GT86 without removing the axle nut or the emergency brake. So hopefully this helps somebody. Hopefully this saves somebody some work. And yeah, good luck. Don't break a bolt.